Welcome to the questions and responses on Health Vacation. Let's get into this. And please share this vital information. Click the subscribe button down below, and this will help our channel grow and literally change the world. Let's get into this. Okay. Question 1 from Van Tellerode, 1750. What exactly are you healing? I'm confused. Dentist and chiropractor and stem cells and infusions. Oh my. This is cool because one of the masters that taught me says, chiropractors don't heal anything. You just remove the interference and the body heals itself. And that's the truth. We do not heal anything. Okay, nothing. Only the body heals itself. What we do, we look at the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. We do an objective analysis by measuring that. We measure through static and stress x-rays if there is a structural deviation, how much that structural deviation is affecting the body by doing 3 different nerve scans: heart rate variability, rolling thermo, surface electromyography. Then we measure the live blood cell analysis to see the health of the blood. Is it in a stress state, or is the blood function compromised because the cells are overlapping, or there's fibrin formation, or what's going on with the blood? Then we do a full torso thermography to check to see areas of increased metabolic response, like maybe there's dental cavitations, root canals, amalgam fillings, something that could be negatively affecting or adding a chemical stressor to the body. And then the CBC to check basically, your functions. Now, then, okay, by identifying that, if there's dental cavitations or root canals or something, that's taken care of, okay, by a Huggins protocol dentist. If we see blood toxicities, that's going to be taken care of. And again, we're just fixing this so the body can regenerate. We're removing the cavitations or amalgam fillings or whatever could be negatively affecting them. If we identify blood toxicities or blood dysfunction, then we'll do either detoxing or nutrient IVs to get the blood healthy. So then the body can start to utilize that to regenerate. If we see a structural deviation within 2 weeks or 30 adjustments, we're getting second x-rays to document that what we're fixing. So, finding the problem on x-ray is one, but we got to do a second x-ray to show that we're actually correcting the problem. That would be a good thing. And then the body can regenerate. So we're just removing the interference. We'll identify a leaky gut, okay? And then we do post x-rays and scans and to see if the gut if we see a normal bowel gas pattern. It's the whole thing is having an objective analysis, which means an object that you can measure. And then based on that, we'll do the light bed therapy for tissue regeneration, the hyperbaric chamber, which again, we're always utilizing the live blood cell analysis or the thermography to see if that's being effective. And then by fixing all that stuff, by removing the interference, detoxing, and getting the body's ability, then the body has the best chance to regenerate. You figure you got physical, chemical, emotional stress. That's the key. You got to address those underlying stressors because physical, chemical, emotional stress, your body responds the same way. And every human being has 2 switches. You can either be in stress or regeneration. Okay. And that's called the automatic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And so we balance that out so your body can respond correctly. Because anybody with high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, elevations in cholesterol, none of those are diseases. They're all the body responding correctly to stress. And if you're not addressing the underlying stressor, you're not really addressing the cause. So yeah, hopefully that cleared up the confusion. Question from Chuck Pendry. How much does all this cost? I'm retired military with Medicare and Tricare. Okay, the cool thing is, let's say you just show up, you call up. $350 is our entrance for the new patients in the chiropractic area. And what that includes is a dental exam and a full set of x-rays and a cleaning. Then it includes a CBC or complete blood cell count. So we can see roughly the status of your system. Then it includes a live blood cell analysis so we can see the health of the blood to see if the blood's in a stress state or functioning correctly. Then it includes 3 different nerve scans. So we check a rolling thermoscan, surface electromyography, and heart rate variability. Then we do a static and stress x-ray of the entire structure and then a full torso thermography to identify areas of increased metabolic response. That's $350. Then based on that, we're going to come up with a plan, and the static and stress x-rays, identifying a problem is one, but doing the stress x-rays of bending the lumbar, bending the cervical spine, you can find out what's working and what's not. Because if it's joint fused, you're not going to regenerate it. If there is movement, you get a chance to change the structure and change the input and function of the body. Then you have to, utilizing the heart rate variability, identify if that person's in a stress response or regenerative response, or if their autonomic nervous system is balanced. And typically you're going to see an unstable pelvis, cervical spine issues, or things that are limiting their body's ability to regenerate. The hotel costs around $130 a night. Now, if you get any IVs or intravenous therapy, the intravenous therapy, we use an L-ascorbic acid, which is fantastic. It doesn't damage the veins, and at the levels that we use, which is different than ascorbic acid, and that costs around $100, $150, depending on the dosage. Most of the intravenous therapies that we do are around between $60 to $150. But we do the IV therapy or the EDT chelation or the blood ozone, and then we do a live blood cell analysis to see if it's being affected. Then we have the hyperbaric chamber, which is around $100. And in the hyperbaric chamber, we built our own hyperbaric chamber. So it's really, really comfortable. I've been in some that are just tubes and they're horrible. Okay, but this, you can actually get IVs when you're under multiple atmospheres of pressure. Then we have a light bed therapy. Now, let's say that, and I wouldn't recommend just shooting stem cells in joints until you fix the problem with the joints. But now let's say that you have a knee issue or a hip issue or a foot issue or a shoulder issue or something else. If you have a shoulder, elbow, or wrist issue and you want to get stem cells in those joints, it's about $50 and $100 to shoot each joint, but I wouldn't recommend it until you restore the cervical spine for any upper extremity issue. If you're going to do the hips, the knees, or the feet, you've got to stabilize the pelvis. You've got to correct the lumbar, which is the nerve supplied to that. You got to get the person in a balanced autonomic nervous system state. Then you got to fix the foot biomechanics, the calf biomechanics, stabilizing the pelvis, getting corrections of the lumbar. Then you can shoot the knees. But you've got to, once you get a stem cells are drawn to inflammatory processes. So once you get the stem cells, your job really has to start then, after you're restoring the nerve supply. Then you have to do these distractive exercises. If you're doing the shoulder, you got to reform the labrum. There's tons of things that you have to do after the stem cells. Stem cells are magical. They'll increase metabolic responses. Peptides are also fantastic in there, and we'll utilize that. Platelet-rich plasma, PRP injections. All of those things can help the joints regenerate, but I do not recommend those until you fix the biomechanics, because they're not going to realign it. They're not going to, if you inject the knee, you're not going to fix the calf biomechanics. And in the calf muscle is the soleus muscle, and that's a pump. And you cannot repair the knee without addressing the foot biomechanics and the calf biomechanics. I mean, that's just common sense. So looking at all of those therapies, and then the dental work, look at it's about half to about a third of the cost of what it costs generally in America. But on the, say for if there's a root canal or there has to be an extraction. In America, if you get an extraction, they pull a tooth and give you the pain reliever. Down at ours, we use Huggins protocol. So doing it in America, when you pull in the tooth and just give it an antibiotic or pain reliever, that can lead the ligament that held the tooth in place and create a subclinical infection called a cavitation. So the way a tooth has to be removed is the tooth has to be removed, then a totally different operation. You got to go in there and remove the ligament. Then you got to take the patient's plasma, or blood, spin it down to plasma cells, and inject that opening so the bone can regenerate. You treat that with ozone, and that whole process is done while you have a vitamin C IV. That's the best in the world. And that really depends on the cost of the dentist. Now, amalgam removal, that if you see this, they have to do a rubber dam. There has to be a special vent to get the mercury vapors out. All this process, and then you have pure oxygen in your nose. Even the dentist and the assistant is protected too, wearing a face mask, so they get pure oxygen too. Then, you get multiple impressions, because when you remove the mercury, you got to replace it with a biocompatible resin. So that, it really is done on an individual basis. But the hotel is $130 a night, and we're right in the floor in the building right next to the hotel. So you go from your room to our office. We also have a medical floor, and that based on, like, let's say you have breast implants that you want to get removed because they're negatively affecting you. We have explant surgeons. We have our own stem cell lab where we grow our own stem cells from umbilical cords, from full-term births. There's a lot of other cost, based on your need. Now, another person asked, I love what you're doing. It's amazing. Where can I get the information on costs of a room at the hotel and treatments? Do you treat everyone, no matter what age? I'm in the UK. Yeah, we do. We treat everyone. I'm laughing at that one because parents will say, 2 weeks ago, I had 3 kids in 1 week. One was 3 days old, one was a week old, and one was 2 weeks old. And, they just bring the kid in to, make sure they're checked. And when parents say, when should I bring my kid in? I'll say, well, you can bring him in now and we'll check and make sure they're healthy, or wait till they're sick as a dog, then drag the body in. And then the parents giggle and, they come in. Call our office, and we have one call center. It's located in Mexico for all my clinics. Do the +1, because that's the U.S. number, 714-962-5891. And it's in the description below this video. And they'll get you set up. That's 1-714-962-5891, and get in there, and we'll give. You can even park on the U.S. side, and we have a couple of vans a day that bring people from U.S. over to our clinic. And the room costs around $130 a night at the Grand Hotel. You can't get cheaper rooms through Airbnb within a block or half a block. And then we're on Avenida Agua Caliente, which is Hot Water Avenue. And there's actually a natural hot springs about a quarter mile away. And then there's, oh my gosh, some of the greatest restaurants in the world down there. I always say Tijuana has the best food of any one of my clinics, except for the one in Bangkok. Okay, question from Notaris 1985. 5 weeks won't save someone with teeth and spine problems. Let's get into that. Okay, let's say you have teeth or spine problems. Not addressing it will be a big deal. But also, within 5 weeks, if you look at our protocols, first day we go in and do a complete physical exam on you. And this means we're getting static and stress x-rays of the pelvis, lumbar, thoracic, and cervical spine. Then we do a full torso thermography to look for areas of increased metabolic response. So if you have cavitations or root canals or something that's negatively affecting you, the only way you can see that is through a thermography first, because that tells you where there's an increased metabolic response. Now, addressing that, you can actually get the cavitations or amalgams removed, or the cavitations. How they deal with the cavitation is they'll go in, they'll clean out the opening, they'll take your blood, spin it down a plasma cell, inject the opening, treat that with ozone, and then that whole process is done while you have a vitamin C IV. So dental amalgams removal, cavitations, root canals can all be corrected with just a few days. Now, spine problems, our protocol is once we identify a problem we can correct, we'll do 3 to 4 adjustments a day. At 30 adjustments, that's when we do post x-rays, post-nerve scans, and post-live blood cell analysis, because that live blood cell analysis will tell you, is the blood healthy or under stress? So at 2 weeks, we're doing second x-rays, scans. That means 3 different nerve scans, post-live blood cell analysis, so we can document the structural and neurologic changes. Then we give you exercises to turn sitting into therapy to get the curve back in the neck if there's a loss of curve. All of this, and then in 2 weeks, we get 30 adjustments. 4 weeks, we get 60 adjustments. So we have 3 data points, the x-rays, live blood cell analysis, and 3 different nerve scans on the initial, week 2, and week 4. And we have to show structural and neurologic changes. Otherwise, we're not being effective. So, and that's usually done within about 4.5 weeks. So, I totally disagree with your perception of this. And just if you don't want to do any of this stuff, come by the office and I'll show you other cases. Question from JHHGZ. What, if anything, could be done about the following issues? 20-year-old fusion of C4, C5, regeneration of thyroid damaged by virus, depression, chronic sinus infection. Okay, anytime you get a fusion, the area above and below that fusion, you've altered the biomechanics. So those have to be addressed. And when you're looking at C4, C5, that's the most common area of some type of whiplash trauma. C5 is particularly. And so you cannot adjust that fusion area, but you can adjust the above and below area to keep those discs healthy. Also, you have to adjust the thoracic area, because if there's a thoracic deviation, that's going to put that area of fusion under significant strain. This is why we take static, you're taking an x-ray like this, and stress x-rays where we're bending that area to see the integrity of the structures above and below the fusion. Because once you get a fusion, you have to get corrective care to fix the problem that caused the fusion in the first place. Now, regeneration of thyroid damaged by a virus. Now, when we look at this, we've got the autonomic nervous system, in 2 parts. You've got sympathetic, which means stress, parasympathetic, which is regeneration. And we need a balance of these two. Now, the thyroid and adrenal glands work in a similar fashion. Adrenals are up under a sympathetic state. Thyroid is down under a sympathetic state and up in a parasympathetic state. So the thyroid is literally responding correctly based on the stimulus. Now, when you look at a thyroid negatively affected by a virus, look at the human body, because bacteria, funguses, parasites, none of these guys are predators. They're all scavengers. So they're going after damaged tissue in the first place. And when you look at your human body, you got 70 trillion cells. You got 10 times the cells bacteria, 10 times the bacteria viruses. And in truth, your DNA is about 45% viral. So to be afraid of viruses is ridiculous. To strengthen the tissue underneath absolutely is. And when you look at the thyroid, you're exposed to so many different chemicals that are called endocrine disruptors that are like hormones, but not hormones. Now, the thyroid in particular loves iodine. It burns it like your car burns gas. But also there's a whole bunch, like remember that periodic table of elements? Chlorine, fluoride, bromine. All of these chemicals, you get the chlorine in the water every time you shower, or anytime you're getting a commercial beverage, you're going to get chlorine and fluoride, because Americans, in some communities, they're still fluoridating the water. And then bromine is used in commercially produced bread. So if you're iodine deficient, and you're exposed to these different chemicals, then the thyroid will not function correctly. So we have to look also at a leaky gut, because if you're taking, let's say you have a leaky gut, and a leaky gut is going to be from taking antibiotics or foods that are toxic that destroy the gut flora. Virtually all medications are going to alter that gut flora. You alter the gut flora, then yeast, which have these little tendrils, that could bore holes in the intestinal tract, but anything that alters that gut can allow yeast, funguses, and mold, because bacteria actually eat mold, to grow, and then this can actually bore holes in the intestinal tract, allowing proteins that aren't tempered by digestion such as gluten and caseins, and these can build antibodies which can negatively affect the thyroid. So look at the thyroid as never a problem in itself. Look at it as a fire alarm to tell you that there's a leaky gut, some type of chronic state of stress, or chronic toxic exposure. That's why we say physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. Those have to be addressed. Then you heal the gut. This means you got to get that person out of the stress state because, again, human beings only have stress or regeneration responses or sympathetic, parasympathetic. So you have to get them out of the stress response so the body can now start to function correctly. Then you heal the gut and change the sleep patterns, get the person up to 3 bowel movements a day, get the right nutrients, and then you look at the health of the blood. Well, actually, at the start of this, so you can see if the blood's under stress, because that blood carries nutrients, eliminates waste products. It has a function. So you have to look at the 3 stressors. And here's a weird thing. If you look at the body has responded correctly based on the stimulus. So the thyroid, every time someone comes in, oh, I got a low thyroid. I say, no, your thyroid is responding correctly based on the stimulus. So you have to look at the physical, chemical, emotional stress that's causing that thyroid to not function correctly or be weakened. And then you can address that. Depression, when you look at the brain's broken up into different areas. Depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, attention deficit disorder, or impulse control. All of these are features of a brain, part of the brain called the frontal lobe. Now, the frontal lobe is programmed with the small brain on the back, the cerebellum. Plus, you have a contributing factor of the gut brain or the enteric brain. And then brains have about 90,000 thoughts a day. That's every human being. Except the problem is 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had the day before. So thoughts fall in loops. Like one thought will hit another thought, will hit another thought. So in brains, the more or the chronic stress you're under, the brains start to wire together almost like that. So the more anxiety and stress that you constantly reinforce, then you get a hard wiring in the brain. So how to correct this, you've got to look at the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors that are the contributing factors. Absolutely. So, and then you have to heal the gut because when you're in depression or anxiety, that is an emotional stressor. Now, physical, chemical, emotional, your body responds the same way to each one of those 3 stressors. Your body goes into this fight or flight state. So you have to address the gut. You have to change the sleep patterns. You have to look at the physical stressors. This means you're taking an x-ray of the pelvis, of the lumbar, of the thoracic, of the cervical spine. You got to find if there is a structural component. Because if you have alterations in this, we've got the 3 things that program the brain. 1, information coming up from the spine, the dorsal columns. And if you have a structural deviation, that's abnormal or abhorrent signals going to the cerebellum. And that cerebellum, again, controls the frontal lobe. So body posture is huge. And then we have to look at, 2 to 3 healthy bowel movements a day, change the sleep patterns. But then the frontal lobe is programmed through repetition, not belief. So you can, and this is neurolinguistic programming that we teach every patient. We also teach every patient cross-crawl exercises, and you'll see people with chronic states of depression that they can't really swing their legs in an even fashion. They have a difficulty in that. That's because their brains aren't firing correctly. So we have to change that brain, change the breathing, because that little 1 kilo brain burns 90% of the body's oxygen. So we teach diaphragmatic breathing. We talk about healing the gut. We talk about changing the sleep patterns and then reprogramming that frontal lobe. Also, visualization, like people in a state of chronic depression. If you say, tell me about your pain, tell me about, and they'll be able to go on because their brains are already wired in that state of depression. They'll say, oh yeah, I'm depressed because of this, because, some traumatic event in the past or some perception of their loss or something. And the brains are going to fire in a loop. And so you ask them to start to visualize moments of joy. Moments of joy. What was that like? Was it when you were a 5-year-old, and your mom was hugging you, or were you on the baseball field, or were you hanging with your friends? So you get what that sight, that sound, that feeling was when you had ultimate joy, and you practice that and practice that. This is why when you master your emotions, you change your physiology. And think of those yogi guys. They can meditate, they can raise or lower their blood pressure. Okay, you master your emotions, and our emotions are based on your perception of what's happening, not what's actually happening. So you can change, reprogram that frontal lobe, heal the gut, get out of the physical, chemical, emotional stress, and then you can start to reprogram that frontal lobe and heal the gut. Chronic sinus infection. Okay, because sinus infections are typically treated with medications, you have to look at a couple of things. Now, all these mucous membranes and the facial bones, and this is a trip because you've got, 6 sinuses in the head, and they can swell up and they can actually distort the facial bones where the sinuses can get locked in. So to correct the sinuses, you got to look at the immune system, which is in the gut, okay, about 90%. So you've got to get the person out of physical, chemical, emotional stress, look at their cervical spine, because if the nerves that supply those sinuses are compromised and the brain doesn't stop at the skull, there's an oblong section that houses about half of the cranial nerves that extends the top portion of the neck. So if there's an upper cervical subluxation, that's going to negatively affect sinus function. If there is chronic sinusitis, you're going to have facial bone distortion. And we can adjust those facial bones in order to de-stress out and allow those sinuses to drain. I mean, I'll go in and move the roof of the mouth, move the zygomatics, move the frontal bone. And these people, when they sit up, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I can feel my whole head is draining. And you'll see this all the time. It's really a trip. But look at sinus problems, and has an alarm, not a problem. It's an alarm telling you there's a defect in the gut function, in the cervical spine, a chronic state of stress. And then you can desensitize out those sinuses. And that helps a lot, a lot. Question from S. Ryder. I'm a 45-year-old male diagnosed with chronic CML. It's a type of blood disorder, blood cancers. What services can you do to help me? Well, luckily, blood is produced 3 times a year. You've got every 120 days, you've got 6 million brand new red blood cells. So you've got to look at it as a tissue production problem and a response to stress. And there's only 3. There's physical, chemical, and emotional stress. So we look at the entire structure. We look because it's a blood production issue, a tissue production, and that tissue production occurs in the gut. And then you ultimately have this automatic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, stress or regeneration. So you're in a stress state. So you break it down. You look at the physical stressors, and your body's ability to regenerate is located in the pelvis and the cervical spine. So you have to check those areas, look at them, because if there is an alteration in structure, there's going to be an alteration in function. Then you have to look at the sleep patterns. You have to look at any contributing factors, and this will show up on a thermography. If there's amalgams, cavitations, root canals that are negatively affecting you, you'll see this. And you'll see also if there's a leaky gut, or what are the contributing factors that's causing your body to not be healthy. Then we do a live blood cell analysis. Now, this will show if the red blood cells, because they should be separate, because they have an electronegative charge. When you're in a chronic state of stress, you produce less stomach acid. Then the cells start to clump together, and eventually they can actually stack in what's called a rouleau coin formation. So utilize the live blood cell analysis. Then you can get some IV therapy or intravenous therapy. And there's only 2 things that IV can do. It's going to either detox or get nutrients in the system. So if you see an inflammatory response in the gut, you can do IV DMSO. You can do, if there's heavy metal toxicity, EDTA chelation. If you see a lot of parasites or something, you could do blood ozone. There's a lot of different IVs that you use, but I would utilize that live blood cell analysis to see the health of the blood to find out what the heck is going on. Okay, and then you utilize a second live blood cell analysis to see if the therapies, the IV therapies, are working. I mean, if you go in there and let's say you do a DMSO or blood ozone or peptides or something, okay, in the blood or the EDTA chelation, then you find out, is it working? Okay, and then you can put nutrients in the blood, but also we have this, blood ozonator that circulates your blood around. It takes about an hour or so, and then that hyperoxygenates the blood. Or we have a hyperbaric chamber, which you can get IVs under multiple pressures of atmosphere that can also affect the blood. So you look at it as a tissue production problem, and then you get to see the results. Now, will it help with it? We don't know how long, how far it's advanced or anything else. But our approach is to look at this as a tissue production problem. And then your body has 4 detox pathways, and those are all going to be defective in yours. You have respiration, perspiration, bowel movements, and urination. So you have to get the person up to 2 to 3 healthy bowel movements a day. You have to have good urination. That means it's going to be light yellow or clear. You have to get diaphragmatic breathing or sweating. This is why saunas are so gosh darn good for detoxing. Okay, and so the diaphragmatic breathing, the saunas, the sweating, the light bed therapy, there's a lot of things you can do to strengthen your tissue production. And if you catch it in time, you can show really, really good results. Okay, question 6 from Summer Gonzalez. Hi, I'm so excited. I have an appointment next week at the Tijuana Clinic. It's my first appointment. I do have a question. If I want to do ozone therapy or stem cells at my appointment, do I need to schedule beforehand, or is there something I can set up after I'm there? I want to finish as many beneficial treatments as I can in one day. Any suggestions? Yeah, absolutely. Ozone therapy, you don't need to pre-schedule for that. We're going to utilize a live blood cell analysis to see, what's needed. And then we do a post-live blood cell analysis after the ozone to see if it's being effective at helping the blood. Now, the stem cells, I recommend if you're doing joints like the shoulder, elbow, wrist, make sure you look at the cervical and thoracic spine to make sure that you've got good blood supply, nerve supply to that area. And then you look at the structures because you may want to reform the labrum of the shoulder before you get any kind of injections. Same thing with the hips, knees, and feet. Before you do that, restore the biomechanics of the feet, the biomechanics of the calf, make sure the knee, you can create an inflammatory response. So if you do get a knee injected, the stem cells are going to be effective. So I recommend you fixing the problem before you get the injection. If you're getting an IV stem cell, that's a whole different world. We actually have to do a blood analysis that literally costs us $400, but we're looking for enzyme markers. Now, every organ in your body has different enzymes. So like when I was hit by a car, they told me I bruised my heart and bruised my liver. And the reason they found out that they did, each organ has these little enzymes that are specific to that organ that should be floating around in the blood. If you damage that organ, those enzymes are there. So we do a blood analysis to see, because if there's any abnormal cell process going on or cancerous process going on, you're going to see enzymes from like the spleen, the pancreas, the liver, the kidneys, the adrenal glands, the thyroid. You're going to see some of those enzymes in the blood. And then we have to ultrasound that, because you do not want to do IV stem cells in the entire structure if there's a metabolic process going on. And then we would have to ultrasound those organs to make sure that there is no abnormal cell process going on. Then you can get it. So IV stem cells take a couple of days, okay? But local, I'd recommend fixing the problem first and then doing the injection. So stem cells are a bit different. But, just come on. I'm looking forward to meeting you. And you're going to see some really cool stuff, because stem cells, blood ozone, they're great, but you got to, because they will regenerate, but you got to fix the problem first, because I don't want you to go in and get the stem cell shot and have it not work. That's crazy. Okay, now, if your question wasn't answered here, please go to the drbvip.com site, Dr. B VIP, and get there, and then we can answer the questions in complete uncensored. There's a lot of stuff I still can't say on social media. God bless you. These were brilliant questions. Thank you. Okay, you were made for the world, and the world was made for you. God bless you all.